Nothing matters. It's all empty and meaningless. This is how the world is. Get used to it. Get on with it, girl.
Why get on with it, girl?
To accept the meaningless and ultimate emptiness of everything, and accept that this creature here, this thing, this evolved creature just will get on with life.
But what you're about to check out is a truly great discussion for lots of reasons. First, when it comes to the God question, both of these people are heterodox in their outlook. Jordan Peterson is famously so, but Susan Blackmore, the one he's debating, is a different drink of water when it comes to her atheism. She labels herself as an atheist, but is not like this stern doctrinaire naturalist, because her main area of study is consciousness, and she admits that makes naturalism very, very difficult. But she's committed to the search. Now, the debate that they're in is about the psychology of belief. Do we need religion to make sense of life? Now, Blackwell is softer towards religion than she used to be, but she's of the belief that the world would have been a whole lot better off if there were no religions at all. And that's another great reason the discussion is great. They move beyond the standard creation versus evolution stuff, or can the Bible be trusted, and they explore how we live and think and why the God question matters to all of that. I'm Brett. I've been a pastor a long time, and here at One Life Network, we love engaging these kinds of discussions because they matter on levels many of us may not recognize. Now, listen to this debate, and I'll point out what I mean by that.
Nothing to do with any religious basis at all. I recognize that I could not come on the train here, have a really interesting discussion, meet Justin again, have a nice glass of cool water, without a load of other people doing it for me. That gratitude, which is one of the things that you quite rightly put into your book, it gives good place to it, and it's very important. That doesn't come from anything religious, unless you say because I was brought up a Christian, it came from there. But I don't base it on that anymore.
What do you think it comes from?
I think it comes from a recognition that I've done a lot of meditation. I meditated every day for 30 years, and I think this has something to do with it. But it's observing the inner consequences of different ways of confronting the world. And I'm much more in recent years in the habit of waking up in the morning, even if it's raining in January in England, and looking out and going, oh, yeah, and it's a feeling of gratitude, not gratitude towards God or towards anybody or anything, just free-floating gratitude. That seems to have a positive consequence. I set the day up better, and it's kind of self-perpetuating. It pops up again and again.
Do you think you can just have gratitude in general, or must gratitude always be given towards something and ultimately God?
That's a good question. That goes back to our discussion about acting things out. Like, gratitude is something you feel towards something. And you can say, well, I don't feel it towards anything in particular. And I would say, all right, well, the diffuse nothing that you feel it towards serves in your psychological hierarchy as your equivalent of God.
No, but it's gratitude. This morning, for example, I looked out and it was so green. We've had frosts and it's been white the last few days, and it was green this morning, and it was just gratitude to the universe, if you like. It's not really God because it's not a creator. It's not anything I can pray to. I know.
Why feel gratitude towards it then?
I don't know, but I find
That's fine.
I know that you tackle in this book that happiness is not an ultimate good, and I struggle this way.
Now, before we go on to the next subject, the gratitude discussion to me is the most fascinating, as many are. I love that topic because it seems simple to us, but the Bible's filled with it. And when you really think about gratitude, it is a profound thing. There's a section of study at UC Berkeley that's called the Expanding the Science and Practice of Gratitude. Gratitude is studied formally at Harvard and other places because of the effect that it has on our minds. And here's the question that he was trying to ask, and I would ask of all of us, is, does gratitude demand personhood, and is it directed towards someone? It certainly is in our experience, and I would argue it assumes that, even if she says it doesn't, because that's the underlying factor behind it. I'm grateful towards a someone, a person of some kind, and it's how we're wired, and the more we cooperate with it, the happier we become.
Not an ultimate goal.
Oh, okay,
I didn't say it wasn't an ultimate
all
goal.
right, okay.
There's a big difference between those
things. You're right. You picked me up correctly on that. Nevertheless, we are happiness-seeking creatures, and I have found through practice and growing older that acting gratitude, thinking gratitude, feeling gratitude makes me happier and seems to kind of rub off on other people.
So I don't think we are happiness-seeking creatures, and I think it's a low goal. Not because there's something wrong with being happy, because, thank God if you get to be happy now and then. But I don't think that that's what we seek. I think we seek a meaning that's deep enough to sustain us through tragedy. And that is way different.
Do you know, when I hit tragedy is too strong a word. I think that, but when horrible things happen to me, or I feel, or I read some terrible thing going on in the world, yes, those are tragedies going on in the world. My response is, nothing matters. It's all empty and meaningless. This is how the world is. Get used to it. Get on with it, girl.
That sounds like a very Zen Buddhist way of dealing.
I guess it is.
Meaning.
Well, it's a paradoxical way, though.
It
Because
is kind of paradoxical.
The first part of
This is a great point that he makes here, because now they're shifting over from gratitude into the question of nihilism, and that comes from naturalism.
that is nihilistic, and the second part isn't. So how do you reconcile those two things? Why get on with it, girl?
Because, well, here's another thing. I've often done this with my students. Let's suppose you become nihilistic. Nothing matters. There's no point in doing it. I mean, I think we live in a pointless universe. What are you going to do? And I say to them, like William James in his wonderful thing about getting up in the morning, but that's a slightly different point that he makes there. But I say to them, okay, tomorrow morning, when you wake up, think it's all pointless. There's no point in doing anything. Now, what are you going to do? Well, actually, you're going to need to go to the loo. You're going to get out of bed and you're going to go to the bathroom. And when you're there, you'll think, actually, I'm hungry. I think I want to go down to the kitchen. I probably should put my slippers on. Why don't I get dressed? You go and have something to eat. And then you think, I'm bored. And you go to university and go into your lectures. And, we are not creatures who will just not do anything. To me, to go through that process, which I've done in the past a lot, and it's just natural now, is a very positive way of living. To accept the meaningless and ultimate emptiness of everything, and accept that this creature here, this thing, this evolved creature just will get on with life.
But you're not accepting the meaninglessness of it, even by going through those actions that you described.
You don't think so?
Not at all,
how
because
can you say that?
Because you're acting as if those things are meaningful.
Yes, I am. I'm
Right,
acting
okay,
as though
so
those things are
Are you pretending that they're meaningful?
Pardon?
Are you pretending that they're meaningful?
No, I'm not pretending. My way of putting it would be that those meanings are constructed by myself and others.
They're personal
and they're
meanings
because
rather than-
because of the kind of creatures we are, because of the meme
But they're not
plexes,
constructed.
I'd like to hear
Hunger
Jordan's
isn't
response to this.
constructed. Neither is your desire to use the loo. None of that's constructed.
No. But the fact that there is a loo is part
Yes.
of culture.
Yeah, well,
And
thank
the
God
fact
for that. Yeah.
See, I've never heard that in a theological discussion before. Whether or not we go to the bathroom, is that a meaningful thing or
But
not?
Thank God would you do that? Sorry, that's a poor joke.
Well, you see, so imagine this. You have the proximal meanings that you described that are sort of a priori, right?
Yeah.
They're handed to you. You might consider them as needs or drives, although they're
Yes.
not. They're personalities. That's not the right way of conceptualizing them. But then there's the intermingling of all those needs and drives, let's say, and that constitutes a new layer of structure, because it isn't just that you have to eat and that you have to use the washroom and that you have to have something to drink and that you have to be warm enough or cool enough to survive. It's that you have to do all those things at the same time in a situation where you're going to have to propagate that across time, and you're going to have to do it with a bunch of other people, and it's always been like that. And so what that means is that out of those proximal meanings, higher meanings arise. And you might say, well, those meanings are arbitrary, and I would think those are religious meanings.
I wouldn't say they are arbitrary, but I would say they were constructed. And it's very interesting. Reading your book...
What do you mean by constructed?
Well, they are a consequence of mimetic evolution, of the language that people are brought up in, the culture they live in, the arguments they have. I mean...
What about the biology that they're given?
Well, we start with the biology, and the memes build on top of that.
The memes are biology too.
Well, by definition, they are, well...
See, this is the thing.
I would follow Dawkins in saying, well, talk about genes as biology, talk about memes as culture. That's all I meant by dividing that. But let me say this.
By the way, she did a book that was kind of going off of an idea that Richard Dawkins published. He did a thing called The Selfish Gene, and he referenced what he called memes. He's the one, it's not the computer ones. Memes are... there's genes that replicate biological things, and there's ideas that get replicated that he called memes. That's where we get everything from the love of music to morals or what have you. That's what she's talking about.
Yeah, but I don't accept that division.
But I want to get back to what we're saying about meaning. Reading your book made me think a lot about what you mean by meaning, and your claim that we should have a meaningful life or strive for a meaningful life, that meaningfulness is important. And I kept asking myself, do I live that way? What meanings does my life have? And, if I think of something like, well, most of my striving goes into writing my books. And, Is that meaningful? And again, I have the same response when I ask myself that question. It's just what this body does.
Then you should listen to the body and stop listening to the thing that's criticizing it.
And what would the body say?
It would say, write your book and try to be as clear as you possibly can about it.
That's what I do. And that's exactly what I do.
What I said at the beginning is that the atheist types act out a religious structure and criticize it.
No religious structure. We come to this big question
Let me get to this question, because
Yes,
I did want to get to this, because you have a fascinating part in your book, Jordan, where you do say this. You're simply not addressing atheists. You say you're simply not an atheist in your actions, and it is your actions.
Or if you are, look out.
And it is your actions that most accurately reflect your religious beliefs. What do you mean by that? Why are you saying that no one is really an atheist deep down?
I didn't say no one was.
Okay.
I said that most of the people who claim to be atheists aren't. So this is why I like Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, because Raskolnikov tried to act like an atheist, right? He took the ideas that were floating around, Dostoevsky took the ideas that were floating around in the late 1800s, which are still the ideas that we're discussing today. One most fundamental idea, I suppose, being after Nietzsche's announcement of the death of God, that if there is no God, then anything is permitted. That was Raskolnikov. Raskolnikov's the criminal in Crime and Punishment, the murderer. He gets away with his murder, technically, but not psychologically. And he decides that if there's no God, anything is permitted.
But
and
this
he can't
doesn't
see
have
a reason.
to be true. That's a person in a character in a novel. I don't think that's so.
Well, let's hear the end of that story. And what
I appreciate him saying that. Let's hear the end of that story, because it's a great book.
What do you take away from what Dostoevsky has to say about?
Well, Dostoevsky's takeaway was that there was a moral law that Raskolnikov was breaking, even though he rationalized his way through it. Like, he committed the perfect murder, right? He murdered a woman who people would have voted to murder, and then he got away with it. And he did it for good reasons, at least reasons that he could rationalize as good. And then he got away with it, but it destroyed his soul. And Dostoevsky's right about that. And one of the things I like about Dostoevsky as compared to Nietzsche, say, because I think Dostoevsky is the profounder of the two, is that in the Brothers Karamazov, for example, Ivan is the atheist, and Ivan is everything you'd want a man to be, like, seriously. And Dostoevsky, man, he doesn't straw man his opponents. The most powerful characters in his books are always the opponents of what he himself believes. And Ivan is always arguing with Alyosha, who's his younger brother, who's a monastic novitiate and really can't articulate himself very well, has nowhere near the force or charisma of Ivan. But Alyosha wins the drama, even though he loses all the arguments. And that's where Dostoevsky is so great. It's like, and this is what you're doing in your life. You're acting out the logos, Susan. That's what you're doing. You're writing books to illuminate the world.
Yes.
You say,
and
well, I
that's
don't believe in that.
from a place of meaninglessness.
And that's what he's getting at, is he's coming from, favorite word on this channel is the logos, or the logos, meaning the word became flesh. The word was first. The Christian worldview at the most basic is we believe that the logos came first and produced matter. The other way around, naturalism is matter produced logos. Matter produced mind or meaning. And that's why she's struggling so much. That's why they said things like, well, you're acting like you have meaning according to your worldview, because she's already said, I believe that the universe is ultimately purposeless and meaningless and these kinds of things. Okay, so how do you transfer that down into how you live your life? Well, I just do it because my body does it. You can feel her grasping for what he's talking about. And what he's talking about is when you're really a naturalist, you embrace life has no meaning, you can't live that way. That's why I say the main reason that I believe in the Christ-centered worldview is because it explains life as I experience it more than any other worldview I've found out there. And you can see that on display as those two interact together. I would invite you to look at we have another Jordan Peterson one here where he talks about Islam, because it's fun to listen to him talk, and it's fun to watch his progression when it comes to his own theism. It used to be psychological, now it's becoming more meaningful on a lot of the different levels. Hope that helps. See you next time.